There's something the heart has been doing since before you were born, before you were conscious, before any thought or memory existed. It did it tirelessly, without conscious instruction, without a single pause, and it will continue to do so for decades to come, repeating the same cycle roughly 100,000 times a day, nearly 40 million times a year. But here's what almost no one appreciates. The heart isn't simply a pump. What happens inside that fist-sized muscle, tucked behind the sternum, tilted slightly to the left, is one of the most coordinated, intelligent, and elegant processes biology has produced in 500 million years of evolution. For centuries, humanity believed the heart was the seat of the soul, of emotions, of thought itself. The Egyptians weighed it against a feather in the ritual of the dead. The Greeks considered it the center of intelligence. Even Aristotle, one of the most astute observers of ancient nature, maintained that the heart was the organ of thought and that the brain was merely a cooling system. It was William Harvey who, in 1628, first demonstrated with systematic evidence that blood circulates in a closed circuit driven by the heart. But even Harvey could not see what was really happening inside each muscle cell, inside each fiber, inside each millisecond of a heartbeat. That would take centuries more to reveal. Let's begin with the structure, because the heart's architecture is no accident. It's an ingenious solution to an extraordinarily complex problem: how to move two types of blood in two distinct circuits simultaneously, without mixing, without interruption, with enough precision to keep every tissue in the body alive. The human heart is divided into 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are called atria, and the 2 lower chambers are called ventricles. The right side receives the blood that has already delivered its oxygen to the tissues, deoxygenated blood, and sends it to the lungs to be replenished. The left side receives that oxygenated blood from the lungs and forcefully pumps it to the rest of the body. All at the same time. 2 circuits, 1 muscle, a rhythm synchronized with a precision no mechanical clock can match. But there is something even more revealing about this structure. The wall of the left ventricle is noticeably thicker and more muscular than that of the right. This is no accident. The left ventricle must pump blood through the systemic circulation, which reaches from the feet to the head, overcoming the resistance of thousands of kilometers of blood vessels. The right ventricle, on the other hand, only needs to send blood to the lungs, which are very close and offer much less resistance. The heart, in a sense, knows its internal geography. Each chamber has exactly the strength it needs to do its job, and no more. Now, if the heart is so precise, if it works tirelessly for decades, a question arises that few ask. What makes it beat? Who gives the order? The answer to this question is one of the great discoveries of modern cardiology and reveals something surprising about the nature of this organ. The heart doesn't need the brain to beat. It has its own internal electrical system, completely autonomous, capable of generating and conducting its own signals. This is called cardiac automaticity, and it's the reason why a transplanted heart can continue beating in a new body, even after all the nerves connecting it to the original nervous system have been severed. The origin of each heartbeat lies in a small region of the heart called the sinoatrial node, located in the right atrium. It is a group of highly specialized cells that spontaneously depolarize, generating an electrical impulse rhythmically and autonomously. This node is, in effect, the heart's natural pacemaker. It functions by emitting approximately 60 to 100 electrical signals per minute at rest. From there, that signal travels rapidly through the atria, causing them to contract and push blood into the ventricles. The impulse then reaches another specialized structure, the atrioventricular node, which acts as a delay gate. It introduces a deliberate pause of just a few tenths of a second. This pause is crucial. It ensures the ventricles have time to fill completely with blood before contracting. It's a precise, millimeter-perfect delay, calculated with an accuracy that even the most sophisticated engineers admire. From this second node, the signal travels through a system of specialized conducting fibers, first through the bundle of His and then through the Purkinje fibers, which branch throughout the ventricular musculature like an electrical tree. This conduction network ensures that the ventricles contract from the bottom up, squeezing the blood into the large outflow vessels with maximum efficiency. It's not a simple jerk. It's a coordinated, undulating contraction, sculpted by millions of years of natural selection to move the maximum volume of blood with the minimum energy expenditure. But here we arrive at what's really happening at the cellular level. Because the heart isn't just pipes and electricity. It's living tissue made up of very special muscle cells called cardiomyocytes. Unlike most cells in the body, these don't divide easily. For a long time, it was believed that they simply didn't regenerate. Today, the science is more nuanced. Recent evidence suggests that there is some capacity for cellular renewal in the adult heart, although it's minimal and clearly insufficient to repair significant damage. This limitation has enormous consequences for cardiovascular medicine and remains an active area of research. Within each cardiomyocyte, the contraction process depends on the interaction between two proteins, actin and myosin. When the electrical signal arrives, there is a rapid influx of calcium ions into the cell. Calcium acts as the molecular switch that activates the contractile mechanism. Myosin molecules, which are shaped like small molecular oars, attach to the actin filaments and slide them in one direction, shortening the cell. This sliding occurs simultaneously in millions of cells, producing the contraction of the entire cardiac muscle. When calcium is reabsorbed, the proteins detach, the cell relaxes, and the cycle can begin again. All of this happens in less than a second. In the time it takes you to blink, the heart has completed an entire cycle of contraction and relaxation. And it does so with an energy efficiency that is still being studied. The human heart consumes glucose and fatty acids, converts them into energy through aerobic metabolism, and generates enough force to pump nearly 7,500 liters of blood through a system of vessels that, if stretched out end to end, would circle the Earth 2.5 times. Now imagine what this means in everyday life. When you stand up from a chair, in a fraction of a second, your brain sends signals to your autonomic nervous system that adjust your heart rate and blood pressure to compensate for the change in posture. When you run, your heart can triple or quadruple its cardiac output in seconds, increasing both the rate and force of each contraction. When you feel fear, adrenaline released by the adrenal glands reaches the heart and activates specific receptors that make it beat faster and more powerfully, preparing your body to act. When you rest deeply, the parasympathetic nervous system releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which slows down the sinoatrial node, reducing the heart rate to 40 or 50 beats per minute in highly trained individuals. The heart is, at all times, a physiological reflection of the state of the entire body. One of the most persistent and erroneous ideas about the heart is that working harder always means wearing it out more. For decades, it was thought that intense physical exercise could be dangerous for the heart in the long run. Today, we know that almost the opposite is true. The trained heart adapts structurally. Its walls become more efficient, the volume it pumps with each beat increases, and the resting heart rate decreases. A trained heart doesn't work harder at rest. It works less because it's more efficient. This adaptation is called physiological cardiac remodeling, and is profoundly different from the pathological remodeling that occurs in diseases like chronic hypertension or heart failure. Studies indicate that regular aerobic exercise is one of the most powerful factors in protecting cardiac function over time. But there's something about the heart that goes beyond muscle and electricity, something that science has only recently begun to explore. The heart has its own intrinsic nervous system, composed of more than 40,000 neurons, that some researchers have informally called the heart's little brain. This system doesn't simply receive instructions from the central brain. It processes information locally, adapts responses in real time, and sends signals back to the brain that influence cognitive and emotional functions. Research continues to explore these connections, and there is still no full consensus on the complete extent of this bidirectional communication. But what seems clear is that the heart is not a passive receiver of commands. It is, in a sense, an active participant in the body's nervous system. The heart valves deserve a moment of their own attention because they are deceptively simple structures that conceal a critical function. There are 4 valves in the human heart, and their sole purpose is to ensure that blood always flows in one direction. They open when pressure pushes them in the correct direction, and close when pressure tries to reverse it. They have no muscles of their own, receive no direct nerve commands, and are purely passive, responding only to pressure differences. And yet, their function is so precise that throughout a lifetime of heartbeats, opening and closing hundreds of thousands of times a day, they rarely fail without reason. They are sheets of connective tissue, as thin as paper, that withstand enormous pressures millions of times without deforming. When something goes wrong with them, the consequences are serious. A valve that doesn't close properly allows blood to flow backward, while one that doesn't open properly restricts flow. Modern cardiology can now repair or replace these valves with minimally invasive techniques that would have seemed like science fiction 50 years ago. The coronary arteries, the vessels that supply the heart muscle itself, are another example of the precise engineering that sustains this organ. The heart pumps blood to all other tissues in the body, but it needs its own independent supply. The coronary arteries originate directly from the aorta, just outside the left ventricle, and are distributed across the surface of the heart like an irrigation system. A blockage in these arteries, which can occur when plaque builds up on their walls over years, interrupts the oxygen supply to a portion of the heart muscle. The oxygen-deprived cells begin to die within minutes. This is a myocardial infarction, and although the name sounds clinical and distant, what happens at the cellular level is a cascade of destructive events that the body tries to stop with every available emergency mechanism. How quickly blood flow is restored determines how much tissue can be saved. Every minute counts in a way that few medical concepts illustrate so clearly. One of the most promising fields in modern medicine is regenerative cardiology, which seeks to answer a question that for a long time seemed unanswerable. Can a damaged heart regenerate functional tissue? Early research with cardiac stem cells generated enormous enthusiasm, but the results have been more modest than expected, and the scientific community continues to debate the exact mechanisms and the true potential of these approaches. Gene therapy, bioartificial scaffolds of cardiac tissue, and the use of induced pluripotent stem cells to generate cardiomyocytes in the laboratory are all active lines of research. There is still no definitive solution for regenerating the human heart, but science is resolutely heading in that direction. There is also something about heart rhythm that connects to dimensions of biology we are only beginning to understand. Heart rate variability, that is, the small fluctuations in the time between heartbeats, is now an indicator of cardiovascular health and the balance of the autonomic nervous system that doctors and researchers are studying with increasing interest. A healthy heart does not beat like a perfect metronome. On the contrary, it displays a subtle and complex variability that reflects the dynamic interaction between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, between the brain and the heart, and between the organism and its environment. Reduced variability is associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease and with states of chronic stress. Richer variability is associated with greater physiological resilience. Heart rate, it turns out, is not just a marker of life, it is a signature of the biological complexity of the entire organism. And so, we reach the end of this journey, with a different perspective on that object you have in the center of your chest. It is not a simple pump, not a poetic symbol borrowed from culture. It is an electrical and mechanical system of extraordinary precision, built cell by cell during 9 months of embryonic development, capable of adapting, responding, communicating, and withstanding decades of continuous use without ever stopping. Its walls contain the evolutionary history of vertebrates. Its rhythm reflects the state of the nervous system, the emotional state, the level of physical activity, and the hormonal environment of the organism. Its valves respond to pure physical laws with a simplicity that belies centuries of evolutionary refinement. Its cells contain the most coordinated molecular machinery that biology has perfected for converting chemical energy into mechanical motion. The heart first beats around 3 weeks of embryonic development, before the fetus has a functional brain, before lungs exist, before any experience is possible. And it continues to beat silently throughout life, in the darkness of the chest, without our attention, without our remembering it, without us realizing the vastness of what is happening in each cycle. If anything defines human biology, not only as a science but as a wonder, it is precisely this: the enormous complexity that operates invisibly constantly, without error, in the space of a fist, asking nothing of the consciousness that sustains it. And now that you know what's really happening inside your chest every second, it's impossible to think of the heart as something simple again. Every beat is precision, energy, history, and life in constant motion. But this is just the beginning. There are equally fascinating systems in the human body waiting to be discovered. If you want to understand how what keeps you alive really works, subscribe now to Anatomy Revealed and join us for the next video, because what's coming is going to completely change the way you see your own body. Oh,